your strength and conditioning coach isn't working in a silo, and then your footy coaches or your technical tactical coaches are working in that silo over there, and they never talk to each other, and they never collaborate or communicate. So what we do inside the gym's got to have some sort of transfer or complement our game model. So how we want to play our football. What we do on the field, we theme up our days, and we marry up the physical with the tactical, technical. So, an easy way to describe to the listeners would be, we have a day, what we call our bulk day, which from a physical point of view, it's our extensive running, so our high-speed running, so to speak. And then we try and marry that up with, okay, tactically, what are the high-speed efforts in rugby league or rugby union? And that's like your kick sprint, isn't it? Like your kick sprint or, your transitional stuff, in rugby league or rugby union where they're kicking the ball and you're going from attack to defence or defence to attack.
G'day, Anthony. How are you?
Yeah, good, Kieran. Thanks for having us on, mate.
Thanks for joining me today. So how's the off-season going at the moment, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to have too much of a break yet. I've been doing lots of planning for this coming pre-season. We've also got a game over in Las Vegas, which takes a fair bit of logistical planning. So spent plenty of time on that, and also just tidying up our roster. So it's going to be busy, but I'll get a short break over the next couple of weeks, and then come back ready to go for early November.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting, that Las Vegas game. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen until I saw it on TV, and I was like, wow, that's actually a really good idea. And I think the Americans will really enjoy watching rugby league over there.
Yeah, well, look, man, I'm not too sure how much participation in rugby or rugby league will drive over there, but I think the big thing is it'll probably drive some betting on the game. So I think potentially that might be the motivation for it. Look, it's a challenge. It is a challenge for clubs to base themselves over there with the distance and the travel and the jet lag and the associated issues around performance. But it's going to be a great life experience for our players to play. At the stadium where the Super Bowl is going to be held, probably only a month and a half earlier, and it'll be we can make a really good memory over there.
Yeah, 100%. Exciting times coming up. So, did you always want to become a rugby league coach after you finished playing, or you sort of didn't know what you wanted to do?
No, I did a teaching degree when I was a young bloke. So when I was coming through the Brisbane Broncos in the early 90s, the game was only semi-professional. Albeit, we got paid, but, Australian sport was all semi-pro. So I did a teaching degree. So I was teaching year 6 when I was 21 years of age and playing reserve grade for the Brisbane Broncos. And then the game went professional. I got signed to the Canberra Raiders for 97. So I had done a year's teaching, played professionally for Canberra over in the English Super League for London Broncos and Hull KR. And then when I came back from there, I restarted my coaching. Restarted my teaching rather, and I started coaching some high school teams. So I coached under 13As and first 13 at school, and so that whet the appetite, mate. So I think teaching is coaching in a lot of ways. So it was something I really enjoyed when I finished playing football over in the UK, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Yeah, teaching is definitely coaching, and you hear it all the time now. Some teachers who've come over to be really good coaches, and all the things that they've learned from teaching and then applied it straight away. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, look, I think you don't have to be a teacher to be a good coach, but I think the best coaches, I think one of the best coaches I worked with was Craig Bellamy. And I said to him one time, like, he's the best teacher that I've seen. And he said, why is that? Because he's not, he didn't do a formal teaching degree, but, just his messaging, his feedback, the use of questioning, use of metaphors, analogies, storytelling, all those different things that, the really good teachers we remember from when we were at school. He was excellent at it. So, you don't have to have done a teaching degree to be a good teacher or to be a good coach, but certainly helped me and has helped me over my coaching career.
For me, I feel like it's getting back to being an athlete has helped me become a better S&C coach and getting in their shoes and understanding what they're going through. So I think if you can sort of, try and go a different way and just learn from a different sort of perspective, it can definitely make you a better coach or a better athlete as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So with the 2023 NRL season over, what are you going to currently work on in the off season, and what were the positives, from the season that you're going to trying to address this season coming up?
Yeah, well, there was plenty of positives. Our ultimate goal was to make the playoffs. We didn't do that, but we took points out of 50% of our games, so it's a significant improvement on the year before. Biggest thing I was proud of this year, mate, was how well connected the group was. We had a really strong, team spirit within the group. Very much connected group. And that was the number one priority for me, coming into a group that had some challenges the year before. And, we spent a lot of our pre-season on building those connections, building belonging within our group, less about the X's and the O's. We had some challenges with some injuries to players during the year. So, one thing we've looked at is adding competition for spots and adding depth to our group. I think, we've got 27 or 28 players who've all played first grade in our squad for 2024. So we'll have significant competition for spots. But in the NRL at the moment, there's a real cluster of teams. Like teams sort of 4 down to team 12 or 13 are very, very close. And ultimately, the difference between us making the finals and not were 2 Golden Point results that didn't go our way. So we're working really hard on how we break that cluster of teams and what can our competitive advantage be. Like, we don't get the luxury of playing 14 games at Suncorp Stadium, or we don't have the luxury of having, this pathway system that produces, 5, 6, 7 players out of their juniors every single year. So what we've got to work out, and we're working really hard on what can our competitive advantage be. So there are a couple of things we're working really hard on, but we're really optimistic about 2024. We finished the year exceptionally well. Our last month of football was probably our best footy, and we're missing a number of our players. So, it was a sound start. I'd probably give it a C+, Kieran, overall. But, we certainly got more in us. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that sort of middle section of the NRL, it's so close. And, being a Parramatta supporter, at one stage we're in the top 6 and then finishing the end of season outside the top 8. So it's just so close and so competitive. And, it's coming down to the wire with those Golden Point results and stuff like that. So it is a really hard competition to win games and then try and make that top 8.
Yeah, well, I've coached at international level in rugby union with England Rugby, and obviously coached 3 different clubs now in the NRL. The NRL is the hardest rugby competition of either code in the world. That's the reality of it. And the salary cap by design makes it a really even competition. Now, you probably could argue that Penrith are way out in front at the moment. They have been. But generally speaking, the salary cap's designed to have this closeness of competition. So, we took points out of 50% of our games this year and didn't make the finals still. Like, generally speaking, a few years ago, if that was the case, you're always playing finals football. So, it's a close competition. It's a tough competition. But I think that's why it's so popular here in New South Wales and Queensland and also New Zealand. I was really surprised at, the support that New Zealand Warriors had in the competition when we played over there. Is incredible atmosphere, incredible vibe around the city. So it's a really popular competition in this part of the world. But I think it's the toughest and most even rugby competition of any code in the world.
Yeah, 100%. And it always seems like every year a team bounces back and then surprises you with their performance and then gets a top 8 finish, So it just shows you how competitive it is and how teams are constantly trying to improve.
Yeah, well, that's, as I said before, that's the salary cap by design tries to have an even competition rather than have 3 or 4 teams like the Premier League soccer who've got the most money and they can buy the best players in the world and take them to their clubs. By design, we don't have a draft, but we've got a salary cap, so it promotes evenness in the competition, and that's what we get. Who would have thought Cowboys, Parramatta, who were top 4 teams the previous year, wouldn't make the top 8 this year? New Zealand Warriors come from 15th and made it to 3rd in this year's competition. So it's very even. Like I said before, how you break the cluster, that's what we're working on. How can we break that cluster of teams and what can our competitive advantage be next year? So that takes up a lot of our thinking and my thinking in particular.
Yeah, 100%. What did you think of the grand final? Because I thought that was just a great way to finish off the season with those 2 teams, and just the dramatic scenes that happened throughout the game was awesome.
Yeah, it's a hell of a game, isn't it? It was incredible standard of football. The skill, athleticism, power. closeness of the game, all those different types of things were there for everyone to see. It was a fantastic advertisement for our game because I thought the game was played in great spirit, but with great athleticism, a fantastic skill level. It was a real benchmark game for our competition, and that's why we've probably had record crowds this year in the game, and the viewership on tally's been really high. We've got some genuine superstars in the game, so some of those guys stood out in that grand final. But it was a great advertisement for the NRL.
So just going back to something that you said before, with building, the team cohesion, what were some of the things that you focused on last season that you're going to focus on this season to make sure the groups are really tight and can really give good performances out on the field?
Yeah, well, again, we'll continue to grow in that space. But some of the simple things we did to build belonging were around, we have what we call junior care groups, like docs groups. So we've got 36 players plus a number of train and trial players. We put them in the groups of 6, and we actually put it in our schedule where they had to meet off-site for an activity once a week, like part of our schedule, just to try and build that closeness in some smaller groups initially. So making sure that was part of our program each and every single week, and we get them to take a photo of whatever activity they were doing, and we created this massive big picture. We painted a picture of this closeness and this connection over the pre-season. We put it on our team meeting room wall. So that was one thing. The other thing was, to get the players to show some vulnerability. So we did a really fantastic emotive activity called Triple H, which is getting players and staff members to talk about their hero, hardship and highlight. And we would do 2 or 3 of those each week. So it wasn't just one session of all 36 players and, all 20-odd staff do it. We, every week we sort of drip fed that in. And, there's some incredible stories, a lot of tears shed. We make sure we embrace the cultures. We've got a really diverse cultural, spectrum of people in our club, and we want to celebrate that. So we had some nights where we had typical food from the different cultures of people we have within our group. So it wasn't just one thing. There was a number of things, and we did a typical army type camp because we wanted to put the players under pressure and show them they've got more than what they think they've got. So we did a model to things, and we'll continue to grow that this year and add to that. But that was the starting point for us. But what we found was by pre-season trial games, we had a really close connected group. And I think one thing, people would say that Manly were a very well-connected team this year. And albeit we didn't make the playoffs, we showed a lot of team spirit, and we had a real desire to look after our mates.
No, that's fantastic. It's always good to hear about stuff like that, and it's definitely the stuff that needs to be worked on the most. And you'll see the rewards out in the field, but you also see the rewards just players interacting with each other and really enjoying what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's never a finished product. It's always like a piece of string. How long's a piece of string? Like, you've just got to continually work on it. You can't think that you've got to connect a group and drop off on it. So we've got a number of things that we're going to add on to what we did last year. But it's really important space, that belonging and connectedness within a group. And I think that's really important within within teams.
100%. So as a coach, how have you found the game of rugby league over the last 2 years? Do you think the game's getting faster and, there's more unique attacking and defending styles of play? What has caught your eye as a coach, really?
Yeah, well, I can't answer about the last 2 years because I was working with England Rugby, the previous 18 months to this season. But I can talk about this year. So, some of the things we're seeing, like if you look at the demand to the game, they've never been higher. So, ball in play. Just to compare like Test rugby into an NRL, when I was working with England, average Test rugby ball and play time was 35 minutes. The average NRL ball and play time in 2024 was 55 minutes. So the ball and play time, gradually gets a little bit longer season upon season. I think Broncos and Penrith, they played for 64 minutes ball and play in round 1. So just imagine that, round 1 of the back of a pre-season. So obviously the intensity within that ball and play is as high as ever. So, you're seeing big, strong physical athletes who are being tested through the demands of the game. So that's certainly what I've seen this year. I think the other thing we've seen is probably for a decade, probably prior to 2018, there was probably a decade where defence. It was more of a defensively biased game. The wrestle really got heavily involved or inducted into our game. I think over the last couple of years, with some different rule changes, you've seen the bias come back to the attack or the advantage come back to the attack. So that's sort of what I saw that this year. Plenty of points scored, even that grand final, what was it, 26-24. So that's 50 points. In a real high quality game of rugby league. So yeah, that's sort of what we saw this year. We saw that, and I think the other thing we started to see is multi-position players. So it doesn't matter what number you wear on your back. It's more about roles rather than positions, if that makes sense. So one of the best ball players in the competition is Isaiah Yeo from the Penrith Panthers, number 13. He touches the ball just as much as Nathan Cleary. Paddy Carrigan does a similar role for the Broncos. So in an old generation, they could have been wearing 7 or 6, but they're bigger guys. So I just think the number on your back of your jersey is probably more position specific. I think the NRL this year is more role specific. You'll see some centres that leave their side of the field and go the other side of the field. You're seeing some halfbacks turn into hookers. So I just think that sort of multi-positional, multi-role players probably growing this year. So they're probably the 3 big things I've seen.
Yeah, it's really cool to see it as well, that you have to have all these skill attributes and put them out in the field. It's the same as with rugby union back in the day. You wouldn't really catch a prop passing, say a 10-meter pass or multiple, bumps out at the back to the 10 or an inside pass. Yeah, and now you're seeing it.
Well, if you watch Island rugby play, they're the best. They're probably the most skillful forwards in world rugby. Their catch and pass. Their 2 front rowers, their catch and pass is outstanding. And they really jumped ahead of the game in rugby. Certainly from what I can see with regards to how they use their forwards as ball players. Typically, I remember listening to Jason Leonard, the ex-England front rower who won a World Cup in 2003. He said it was his 51st test until he touched the footy in a game. Can you believe that? And so the way the forwards play in rugby now is vastly different, and Ireland do it the best.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's just cool to see all these different players got all these different skill attributes, and then coaches trying to use them as well. And it just reminds me of sort of like the NFL as well. You have all these skill players on my offense. How can I best utilize them and, show off some different skills as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great.
So what are the keys to having a successful attacking rugby league style in the NRL?
Yeah, well, I think whether it's NRL or rugby union, I would call it live attack. Everyone's got a role on each play. So you want to be live, not dead. So think of push support. Think of power running. Think of people being options rather than decoys. So the thing that we see in the NRL with live attack is teams are really good at creating momentum. So power running, push support, getting one-on-one tackles. And the more one-on-one tackles you get, the quicker they play the ball. So off the back of creating momentum, teams then apply pressure, through their decision makers or their ball players. So I think, the best teams in the competition can create momentum, then they can apply pressure off the back of that. And, the best teams now in the NRL from an attack point of view are less structured, so they'll have a framework, but they're making decisions all the time. Some people call it rise up footy. I'm not sure whether that's the right way to describe it, but it's a bit of a corny sort of term at the moment. But I think it's about creating momentum, then applying pressure, then allowing your decision makers and your ball players to play off the back of that.
So what's it like having DCE as your halfback and just sort of allowing him to sort of control it, or you still give him that sort of give and take relationship, or you're just sort of giving him a bit more take and just sort of letting him go with the flow?
Yeah, well, as I said before, you have a framework, but why would you try and why would you try and put a straitjacket on somebody like Ches? So they're the decision makers out there. As I said, we'll have a framework about how we create the momentum and how we can apply pressure, but ultimately we want them making decisions. Want them using weapons. So he's got a great kicking game. So why wouldn't we use his kicking game? Regardless of what tackle it is. So yeah, I think the best attacks use their weapons really well. And you look at Broncos and Penrith in the grand final, they've got some real weapons in their team. And if you think of Ezra Mann, like that wasn't from structured play, he scored 3 tries, or one of them potentially was where Reece Walsh went through, but the other 2, Ezra Mann, for those I'm listening at home, I'm sorry, who don't know much about the NRL at home, he essentially took the line on twice himself. He just looked up, saw that there was a middle forward in front of him, or saw someone turning out and made those decisions on the run. So that's what we wanted to do. Like, we're 200 metres away, mate, so we've got to give the players the opportunity to make a decision.
Yeah, 100%. So with the ball being in play more, how are you trying to stop that momentum and stop those one-on-one opportunities that the attacking's getting in for the defense?
Yeah, well, you've got to try and find a way to break the pattern of the team, right? So one thing that I did learn from rugby union was how can we create more contests? How you hand over the football to the opposition team, so how you minimise the back five. So Penrith, for instance, got the best back five in the competition, right? So if you kick long to them, as an example, they're going to create momentum on early tackles, aren't they? And then they just fall into their pattern. So you, as a coach, what you can help the team with, okay, so what's the way to break the pattern? So it might be running on the last. So rather than give Brian Tolu or Dylan Edwards an opportunity to get a one-on-one on a kick return, hand it over to them so it's a static start, or kicking in the touch so it's a static start. So as coaches, we can come up with some ways to try and break teams' pattern. When the momentum is against you and you get scored against, well, why would you go back and kick up on to the big front rower and James Fisher-Harris who's going to charge onto it? So do you try and create a contest? Do you kick to a different part of the field? So there are all ways that you can try and break the pattern of opposition teams. But once a team has momentum in the NRL, it is really hard to get it back. So you've got to try and find a way to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting area of how to break momentum. And, do you hand it to that player a bit more and try and get them a bit tired, or you do the opposite, try and go a different way so they're not being involved as well? I've heard stories from both areas. So it's always interesting to hear people's perspectives on that.
Yeah, definitely.
So planning out a typical training week, how do you structure so you get enough time working on attack, defense, restarts and all that? How do you sort of best plan that for your week with the athletes that you got?
Yeah, well, the way that I do it is essentially early in the week, it's about giving the players clarity. This is how we want to play this week. There's some opportunities. So, we're trying to install how we want to play our footy. So think of, it's almost like CIA, right? So early in the week, it's clarity. Then you test the game plan at intensity in the middle part of the week, so you'll have some arm wrestles, you'll have some cycles, you'll have a little bit more contact, so the physicality is up a little bit. And then as you get closer to the game, it's about accuracy. So I think of, clarity early in the week, intensity the middle part of the week, and accuracy the later part of the week. So that's how we, we install our game plan or a game model, as we call it. And every coach does it differently, so there's more than one way of doing things, but that's just a way that we find, it's a way that I feel really comfortable with as a coach, to install, how we want to play our footy and practice our footy.
No, I think that's a really cool acronym that you got there, and I think I'll start using that as well. But how much do you spread out the contact during the week? Do you still get a decent amount of contact in there towards the back end of the week, say if you're playing a game on the weekend, or do you sort of ease it off quite a bit?
Well, it just varies. It varies. The variability on that is over a number of things. How many days between games? Like if it's a 5-day game, you're not going to get that intensity session where you do a lot of contact in the week because you've only got a 5-day turnaround. If it's a 9-day turnaround, well, yeah, like the potentially that intensity, the middle part of the week, is going to have a little bit more volume with regards to contact. So, we plan all that depending on our schedule, but also what we think the players need. If the players there was one period early in the year where we had 2 Golden Point games in a row, and that takes a lot of juice out of you, regardless of whether it's a 6, 7, 8-day turnaround. So, just what the players need. That's something you always think about as a coaching staff. It's not what you want; it's what the players need. So. But it varies week to week on your turnaround in the NRL. Look, it's from 5-day turnaround to a 10-day turnaround, so it's vastly different.
It just comes back to having that really good relationship with your key players and making sure that you understand, what's going on with the playing group, because you don't want to prescribe something that's not really appropriate at the time.
Yeah, as I said, it's what the players need. Yeah, not what
Mm.
you need, what the players need. Yeah.
So in today's modern world, there's so much data and analytics out there. As a head coach, what are you trying to focus on as the main pieces of information that you sort of go back to every now and again? And what stuff are you trying to sort of not focus too much on?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of statistics, isn't there? In all sports now. So what we've tried to narrow our focus to is what we call win metrics. So what are the win metrics? So there's those things that potentially the difference between winning and losing. So in rugby league, what we've seen is people will talk about completion rates, but what we've seen over a period of time, completion rates don't win your games. Like I think 2 years ago when Bulldogs finished last, they had the highest completion rate in the competition, but they finished last. So you've got to try and minimise all the noise because there's so many stats. But what we've tried to do, and again, I learned this of Eddie Jones with regards to his time at England Rugby. I just like the way the narrative focused to only the important few stats, and we call them win metrics. And I've sort of probably taken that idea from a time with England Rugby. What are the really important things? We don't show a lot of statistics or a lot of numbers to the players, just what they need to know. But one of the things they need to know is, and again, I won't talk about it, but we've got some win metrics that's all we'll show to the players. It's the few big rocks, so to speak, on. We know that's the difference between winning and losing games. So that's what we sort of do. And, that's what coaches and potentially all sports could think about. Okay, what's the difference? Are you just giving players stats because that's what they show on the tally or what another team does in your competition? But, a good challenge would be think about, okay, well, what are the 5, 6 things that are the difference between winning and losing? So that's always sort of show the players, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to do it, and not focus on too much, and try and avoid some things that you might be getting carried away with as well, because there's, like you said, there's so much stats out there and analytics as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, how has strength conditioning training helped your athletes become better rugby athletes out on the field?
Yeah, well, we have an approach, like essentially it's an integrated approach to how we repair. So, the fancy term for it is tactical periodization. But essentially, it just means you integrate it across all parts of your program. So by that I mean, your strength and conditioning coach isn't working in a silo, and then your footy coaches or your technical tactical coaches are working in that silo over there, and they never talk to each other, and they never collaborate or communicate. So what we do inside the gym's got to have some sort of transfer or complement our game model. So how we want to play our football. And what we do on the field, we theme up our days, and we marry up the physical with the tactical, technical. So, an easy way to describe to the listeners would be, we have a day, what we call our bulk day, which from a physical point of view, it's our extensive running, so our high speed running, so to speak. And then we try and marry that up with, okay, technically, tactically, what are the high speed efforts in rugby league or rugby union? And that's like your kick sprint, isn't it? Like your kick sprint, or your transitional stuff, in rugby league or rugby union, where they're kicking the ball and you're going from attack to defence or defence to attack. So we might do that on one day. Then the next day is as a change of pace day, an XL decel day. So you think about in rugby league or rugby union, where your most changes of pace are, when you're attacking in good ball, so when you're attacking opposition try line, or when you're defending your try line. So inside that 20 or 22, there's a lot of changes of pace, a lot of up, down, accelerations, etc. So, even the way that we prepare there, and I think ultimately also from a mental skills point of view. So, how we reset after an error. So we've got some mental skills that we have implemented to get to our next job. If we can get scored against, or particular drill training is not going so well, what sort of huddle, what's the huddle look like? Rather than just like 10 people talking, we have an opportunity to reset, get neutral, and give the one or two things that are really important to go forward. So, we try and integrate our approach, and the strength and conditioning side of things has to complement our game model. Otherwise, we don't do it.
Yeah, 100%. So what was strength conditioning like back when you were playing? Was it something a lot different to where it is now?
Yeah. Well, I was really lucky, I've got to say. I come through the lower grades at Broncos as a player. We had a guy called Calvin Giles who was an Olympic back and field coach. So he was cutting edge. He'd come from England, where he had coached guys like Daley Thompson and those sort of people. And he led the program at the AIS in the early 80s. So, like, Broncos were ahead of the game, not just having test players and origin players, but they were ahead of the game physically. When I was a kid coming through, I had 5 years there in the lower grades from 17 through to 22. So we were really lucky there. We were really lucky. Then when I went to Canberra, they were heavily influenced by the AIS. So I turned up to Canberra, and guys like Bradley Clyde, Laurie Daly, they were like Olympic athletes, mate, the way they prepared. So so I was quite fortunate, but it was probably more in silos. That's probably the only difference for me. Now I can't talk about other clubs, but when I went to England, it was vastly different. Marcel, I went and played for a club called Hull KR in the north of England, and the gym program was more like bodybuilding, and then you got on the park, and the speed program was like you're training for a 100-meter race, and then you did your footy stuff, and there was never an integrated approach to how you prepare. But I was quite lucky, when I was playing in Australia at Broncos in the lower grades, and then in first grade at Canberra. Both those clubs were in the 90s, probably ahead of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. It's just really cool to see how it's evolved over, the last 20 years and the way that it's going now.
Yeah, I mean, the demands of the game, we know exactly what the game looks like through GPS, so you can be really specific about, ball in play, bouts of play, meters per minute, accels per minute, contact, collisions per minute. So you can prepare for the worst case scenario. You can prepare for the most common scenarios. So you can do all that within your training. So we've never had better programs for teams in the NRL. So what you've got to try and look at, okay, is what is your competitive advantage? How can we get ahead of the game by how you prepare? So that's always something that we're always thinking about. Legally, get a competitive advantage, and so we're always trying to do that. And every club in the NRL, or at international rugby level, we're always trying to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Hi, everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby S&C blog today. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby S&C on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode.
What do you often think is neglected and forgotten about in a rugby league program, say at the top level, but also giving some advice for more the semi-professional or amateur level?
I can't talk for what's neglected at other clubs in the NRL because, I don't know. But I think probably, at junior level, potentially, what I just spoke about, having an integrated approach, even, when it's just you and your assistant coach, and your assistant coach is also the strength and conditioning coach for your under 18 side, at your local club. Like how can you use games at training as an example? So rather than do fitness drills, when you're training twice a week, how can you use games, small-sided or big-sided games, where there's decisions to be made, there's skill, execution to be had, but also you're getting those physical, you're getting the physical preparation that's required. So I think, just that potentially something that would get neglected is that integrated approach, even at that lower level. It comes with communication, collaboration, but I can't talk for other clubs. But I don't know.
Yeah, that small sided games definitely is a game changer for a lot of athletes and teams. And if you can do it well and keep that meters per minute and intensity up, you're definitely going to see some good transfer over to the field as well.
Yeah, look, you definitely will. I think, if I'm coaching, park footy or local club rugby, and you've only got 2 1-hour sessions a week, I'm using a heap of small-sided games into long-sided games, always competing, short bursts, short bouts of a couple of minutes with a small break, then you go again, and you can really expose the players to what the game looks like, even at that level. But it'd be something for coaches at semi-professional or amateur level to think about.
Yeah, 100%. So what was it like being an assistant coach to Eddie Jones over in England Rugby? Something completely different to the NRL, and England Rugby, they definitely hold themselves up really high, and the media is just ruthless over there. So what was it like, working over there and working with Eddie Jones?
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. In actual fact, it was probably yeah the most enjoyable experience I've had in coaching. I've got to say, like, to get the opportunity to coach against the Springboks, who are the world champions, right? So the first time we played the Springboks was in 2021 when I was coaching, and we beat them at Twickenham in front of 80,000 people. Had an opportunity to coach against the All Blacks. When does a league coach get an opportunity to coach against the All Blacks? So as an assistant coach, we had a 25-all draw with the All Blacks at Twickenham, 82,000 people sell out. Coached a series against the Wallabies over here, 3-test series that we were fortunate enough to win. There was all these really good experiences, and then there were some challenging times. Because right at the end, Eddie was in the gun of the media over in the UK, so it was a really interesting time. Even trying to help Eddie navigate through that. But I loved it. I ended up coaching 15 tests for England, which, for a guy from Rockhampton who is from a rugby league background, it's probably unheard of. So, it was a fantastic experience. I learned a heap. And Eddie's a world-class coach, regardless of what's going on with the Wallabies at the moment. He's a world-class coach, and I was really fortunate to spend 2 years, essentially, for 6 months working as a consultant, and then 18 months doing the assistant coach role for England. It was fantastic. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm currently reading his book, and it does help me understand more of what he's trying to do and how he's trying to do it as well. So I think we can jump to conclusions pretty quickly. And, it's very disappointing to see how the Wallabies went. And, it's not just Eddie, it's, the whole system that's been in place. Rome wasn't built in a day, but also wasn't destroyed in a day as well. So I think if you can give Eddie some slack and try and read his book or just understand what he's trying to do, I think you can really understand what's going on.
Yeah, well, he's a world-class coach. So he had the most winning record in the history of England coaches. Only coach ever to win 2 series in Australia, 2 3-test series in Australia. 1 Grand Slams, took him to the World Cup final. So, like the facts are there. He took Australia to a World Cup final in 2003, won a World Cup as an assistant with Springboks in 2007. Like, he's done everything in the game. He's a good coach. The challenge for the Wallabies at the moment, unfortunately, is the depth in their squad, and they've got a very young group coming through. And it reminds me a lot of the young Broncos guys I had back in my season and a half in Brisbane Broncos. Like, that same crew, I think, out of the grand final. Like, there was 9 or 10 of those guys I gave the boost to, and there was another 2 or 3 who had played sort of between 3 and 10 games. And we always knew they were going to come on and progress. And Eddie's gone down this route of giving these young guys the opportunity, and it's going to take time to develop because the system's forward in Australia, and everyone can see that. And certainly coaching against them, you can see that. There's not great depth in rugby union. All the best kids in New South Wales and Sydney, I shouldn't say, generally speaking, all the best kids go to rugby league, even if they're rugby union players, because financially you can go straight from school and earn, well, now on a development contract is 80 grand. So straight out of school you can go and do that. And so financially, they're better rewarded in rugby league as they come through out of school and go into full-time systems, and they're training systematically in full-time systems. So you can see that incremental improvement over the first couple of years. And guys like Cam Murray or Angus Crichton or Joseph Suaalii, all guys who play GPS rugby, just to name 3, they all got better over the first 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, in the rugby system, they play a couple of games in under-20s, and then predominantly they're training Tuesday and Thursday night with Randwick or Eastwood or Manly or up in Brisbane at Wests or Jeeps or Brothers, and it's a real challenge for them. And but they're going to have a good team. Like, I think Eddie's right. Like, in 4 years' time, they got a really good team, but they just got to stay the distance. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So what were some of the things that you've already alluded to a couple of them that you learned from rugby that you get applied to rugby league? Is there any others that sort of that you can think of? And what could, rugby work on that rugby league is currently doing really well as well?
Oh, well, there's always takeaways in whatever sport you work in. The biggest thing I got from rugby union, what got me to think about, was how can we create more contests in rugby league? Like, everything's a contest in rugby union. So every ruck's a contest. Every scrum's a contest, every line-out's a contest, every box kick's a contest. So there's so many contests throughout the game. In rugby league, a lot of the contests have been taken away over time to try and speed the game up. So scrums aren't a contest anymore. They're a restart. So they serve a purpose because it takes out some defenders, but they're not a contest. It's a restart. Um, you can get a contest for a one-on-one tackle in rugby league. In the old days, you used to be able to rake it, play the ball. That was a contest. That's been taken away. So, it got me thinking about how can we create more contests in rugby league. So there's certain ways you can do that, even if you just look at the aerial contests as an example. So that's certainly one thing, and probably not be so systematic insofar as, in rugby union, often you'll see both centres together. You won't have a designated left centre and designated right centre. So how can we sort of think a bit more freely and, less sort of structured? How can we use potentially that short side centre, getting going across the other side of the field, and whether it's centre to centre or be an option on the other side of the field, just little things like that. And I really like the way that rugby, or particularly England with Eddie, went around their training and their training design and so on. I thought that was really good. Yeah.
Awesome. I think the big thing that in rugby union over the last sort of 3-4 years is playing the short side. And I think in rugby league, that's becoming a thing as well, playing that short side and making sure that no athlete is, getting comfortable out there and you're trying to attack them when they're trying to take a little break out there as well. So I think that's a really cool thing that I've seen in rugby league that I think our union have sort of led the way a little bit.
Probably disagree a little bit with that, but I think one thing that union's taken from league is you'll see Ireland play now. Like they play like a rugby league team, so they use their forwards as their ball players coming out of yardage. They use block straight, which is quite prevalent in rugby league. Andy Farrell, the Irish coach, used to play for Wigan, and he's got them playing like he played as a 13 in rugby league. He played as a ball playing 13, so you can see his influence from rugby league on that. Sean Edwards, the French defence coach, I was fortunate enough to play with Sean, but he's a Super League and English rugby league legend. He's taken a lot of those up and in principles, or what they call blitz in rugby union, to Wales. Well, Wasps, which is a club side, Wales, and now France, and they're probably considered the best defensive side. So the best attacking side in union and the best defensive side in union at the moment. You could argue, or arguably the best, are very heavily influenced by rugby league coaches, or ex-rugby league players, and Andy Farrell and Sean Edwards. I think there's so many things that, particularly in phase play, that rugby union can learn from rugby league. But because I've got so much time to spend on lineouts and scrums, they don't get a lot of time to do it, so that's the difference. But you always learn with both codes.
Yeah, and definitely the forwards coach will definitely ask for another 10 or 15 minutes on scrums or line out, so you do lose some time.
I worked that out. Yeah, I worked that out.
Yeah, which is pretty funny sometimes. But yeah, it's just cool to see how coaching can definitely apply to both sports, and I think it's very unique to both areas as well, because there's not many sports that are so similar in sort of structures and players as well. So it's really cool to see that coaches are getting opportunities in both sports.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think you ever come back to rugby union one day in the future and do some more coaching in there, or you sort of just don't know?
Look, man, I haven't thought past Manly, and I've got I really enjoy the job at Manly. It's been really enjoyable. 12 months being back in the NRL. It's coaching's very very much a cycle. And I've enjoyed my first 12 months. But ultimately I've got 2 years left here in Manly. I want to stay at Manly. But I also understand we need to make the finals over the next couple of years, and we want to play finals football. So, I've got a really narrow focus on that. But one thing I would say is that I really enjoyed rugby at international level. It was a fantastic experience. But, I'm really committed to what I'm doing with Manly. And, I'm really focused on the next 24 months with the Manly club. I love it. I'd like to stay for longer than that.
Awesome. But who knows, maybe when it's all said and done, you're old, you're not coaching professionally anymore, you just go have a crack in under 16s or under 18s coaching a rugby team. I think that would be pretty cool as well, just to go back and see if you can coach them to a successful season.
Well, I would always love to give back, because one of my key philosophies is be a servant to the players, and I started coaching schoolboy footy. I've been fortunate enough to have a professional career in both codes for 18 or 19 years now, since I left being a school teacher. and yeah, I've loved it. So whenever I'm done, I'm sure at some stage down the track when I've retired from professional coaching, I'm sure, whether it's as an assistant coach or do something with somebody, because yeah, I enjoy helping others, and I enjoy that sort of team camaraderie and helping others.
Would you ever strap on the boots again and play some of those lower grades, or not?
No chance. I'm 49, mate, so there's no chance in the world I'm playing any sort of Masters rugby or rugby league.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, next part, short and sharp questions. Answer as quick or as long as you want to. So outside of rugby union, not rugby union, outside of rugby league, what sports do you like to keep up to date with and watch?
Yeah. Well, I watch heaps of rugby union, and I don't watch any of the NRL. What do you call magazine shows or anything like that? I watch all the rugby union and AFL ones. Like I watch AFL 360, a big Carlton and Collingwood. And Port Adelaide, those three clubs, I've sort of got to know their coaches really well, so I sort of support those three clubs from a distance. So, if I just want to chill out and watch a bit of rugby or AFL, I'll watch Stan Sport for the rugby, and I'll watch the Fox for the AFL channel there, and watch games or watch some of the magazine shows, because it's not rugby league. I don't want to be listening to the opinions within the media around the sport that I'm coaching in. So that's a good way for me to tune out. And the third sport is cricket. Like, I love cricket. I played at a really high level until I was 18 or 19 years of age, and then give it away because I was playing footy. Or footy got a bit more serious, and I love it. So I follow the cricket. So those three sports, I love following those three sports.
That's awesome. Were you more of a batter or bowler, or a bit of an all-rounder?
Yeah, and I was a bowler. Yeah, I was a bowler. I really enjoyed cricket. It was a great sport to play as a young boy. Yeah.
Have you guys ever gotten the bat and the ball out at Manly yet, and showed them some heat in the nets or anything like that?
My shoulders probably couldn't bowl too quick. I'd be a slow medium pace. I'd just be really accurate, try and put it on the spot, mate.
Yeah.
But look, we typically have the club typically has an Australia Day cricket game each year, and for one reason or another, we weren't able to do it last year. But certainly something that we'd like to do. And actually, we get on really well with the Manly Cricket Club here, so they've sort of asked us, would we want to play them in a 2020 game over the off season before Chrissy? So we'll do something like that with the guys, because a lot of our guys, love cricket as well, like Jake Trbojevic and Lockie Croker, those sort of guys are big cricket fans. So they fancy themselves as well.
No, that's awesome. So which Manly player is due for a breakout season next year in your eyes?
Look, I think Tolu Kola and Haumole Olakau'atu both had career best seasons this year. So I think those two guys, along with Taniela Paseka, who's our front rower, they've all played enough NRL now, so it's not so much a breakout season. But I can just see one of those three guys coming through and really becoming elite players. I've got a really high opinion of all three of those guys. Yeah.
That's awesome. Which song would you pick to sing at a karaoke bar?
It'd be something from Guns N' Roses or Foo Fighters. So I do fancy myself as a karaoke singer after a few beers, I've got to say, but I'm not very good. So.
Is there any common misconceptions that you hear in rugby league that is just wrong?
Look, there's always a lot of misconceptions, outside your building about what's going on within the building. But look, we live in a world where there's 24/7 focus on NRL and AFL in Australia in particular. So there's that sort of 24/7 news cycle. So there's always different stories, and some are close to the mark, some aren't close to the mark. But you never know what's going on in someone else's club or another club unless you're in there yourself. So common misconception would be if there's a narrative painted in the media that's 100% correct. Or if there's a narrative, painted on social media by some, certain groups of supporters or teams supporters or whatever, that's correct. But that's life. But there's always misconceptions about different teams and different sports. So
100%. Who was the funniest player on the Manly team in your eyes?
That's a really good question. To be fair, there's quite a few guys got a little bit of banter about them. Whether they're funny, I'm not so sure. But there's, yeah, some really, good guys with some real good sense of humor. Guys like Toff Sipley and those sort of guys are, they're really very much the glue to the group. Tommy Trbojevic is actually a little bit humorous too. When he wants to be, he's a bit cheeky, but yeah, there's a good group of lads there. So really good group of lads there, and enjoy coaching.
That's awesome. What has been sort of a big game changing moment in your coaching career that sort of stands out?
Well, probably Eddie offering me a job sort of 2 weeks after I finished at Brisbane Broncos. I think, the easy thing would have been, for someone to give it more time before offering me an opportunity. Like he offered me a consulting role, 2 weeks after I finished at the Bronx. So that was great. Because it allowed, what it did was I didn't have to go over there. I was doing externally for 6 months, and it allowed me to spend some time being a coach mentor at Newcastle, but also doing some mentoring in the business world. Like so Kestrel Coal, which a big coal mining company, they were getting me to do some mentoring with their leaders, across their organisation, which is a vast organisation because it's massive, it's coal mines. So I was doing bits and pieces, and it allowed me to do some media. I was doing some commentary for radio. I was doing a little bit for Channel 9. So it allowed me all these opportunities, and then off the back of that, Eddie asked me to go full time with England Rugby. So I was travelling over there for the best part of 18 months. And as I said, I coached 15 tests, and when I was coming back, I was still doing some stuff in the media. So yeah, I probably wouldn't have ever had that opportunity if some other things in life didn't go the way they did a couple of years before. So there's always a silver lining or an opportunity when you think things haven't gone that well. If you can dust yourself off and get up and have another go. But yeah, Eddie really believed in me, and as I said, he gave me an opportunity to do some work for him. He originally was looking at some of their opposition and how England could attack them, and then, as I said, he offered me the full-time senior assistant coach defence role, which was great. So yeah, that was certainly that was a great opportunity for me, and ultimately led to me coming back to the NRL.
No, that's awesome. Do you feel like there was more pressure on you, the first time you were speaking in front of the camera for Channel 9 or the radio compared to coaching? Like, did you get some butterflies in the tummy before that?
No, look, because I'd done quite a bit, as a coach, you're always getting interviewed and so on. I felt pretty comfortable. It was a good experience looking at it through a different lens, right? You're looking at it from the media's perspective, and so I reckon that really helped me because, you're looking at it with a different lens. So no, it was. I really enjoyed that experience, and it taught me a lot about the media side of things. I've always come from just the coach's side of things, but having a different lens and looking at it from a different perspective, and the media perspective certainly, I reckon it's helped me.
No, it's awesome. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would you have on it and why?
It's a really good question. I think it would change. I think one of those revolving billboards, something like in Times Square or whatever, it would be revolving. And there'll be 2 or 3 key things at the time that you think are important. And I think it would change at different times, what you would have up on there. But it'd be about something about the team, something about connection and team first, without sort of thinking of a corny quote. It'd be something about the team.
100%. Do you have any book recommendations that people should read?
Well, look, there's a ton of books I would could recommend. But I think if you're a coach and you want to get better at the teaching side of things, there's a guy called Doug Lemov. It's spelled Lemov, and he's got some really good books. And one in particular, I think it's called The Coach's Guide to Teaching. I really recommend people want to get better in that side of that side of their coaching, whether it's S&C staff or technical tactical coaches. It'd be worthwhile having a look at Doug's stuff and having a look at that book. But any book you can learn from, as I said, there's so many good ones. But that's just one that I think would be good. And I think the other one would be, I think by a guy called Wade Gilbert. He's got some really good stuff. He's out of the States on the coaching, coaching pedagogy, that sort of thing. So, yeah, good ones. If you purely want to look at the teaching and the coaching practice side of things.
Awesome. And what is a highlight that sort of stands out the most in your coaching career so far?
Well, there's probably three. Well, look, one is having the opportunity to be an assistant coach with Queensland State of Origin. I was lucky to do that for a couple of series. The second one is to work with England Rugby as an assistant coach. Different sport, different country, different culture. And then the third one is as being a head coach and taking South Sydney from way down the table to preliminary final. Albeit we didn't make the grand final, but as a head coach in my first year, that really stood out. How we were able to make some significant change there, and lead that group to a prelim final. And hopefully it's in front of me. The aspiration is to win a premiership while I'm coaching. So I'm hoping that the number one, the number one goal of winning a premiership comes to fruition. But those three things, stand out. They're three pretty cool experiences when I reflect back on, getting the opportunities. Those three different opportunities.
No, it's awesome. So who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any coaches or athletes that come to mind that should jump on for a chat?
Yeah, I reckon if you get John Clark, John's actually coming to Manly as our head of performance. John worked with Eddie for 6 or 7 years at England Rugby. So essentially through 1.5 or 1 3/4 cycles with England Rugby, and he came from Warrington as their head of performance, and he prior to that came through, played 300 odd Super League games, represented Great Britain. So he's very good, and one of the reasons why we got him at Manly, we feel as though he's world class, and we wanted to add world class staff to our environment. So you'd find him a really interesting chat. And then from a player's point of view, I think Tommy Trbojevic would be one that really well-educated young bloke. He's seen the highs of the game, individual recognition, but he's also seen the lows through his injuries and how he sort of mentally and physically, how he's had to recondition himself over a few different challenging injuries. I think you'd enjoy talking to those two guys from our club, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the recommendation. So where can listeners find you on social media if they just want to keep up to date with what's going on with your coaching career?
Yeah, I don't do anything on social media other than LinkedIn. Yeah, but I stay well away from it.
Easy done. So go on LinkedIn, but just follow Manly on Instagram, and that's how you'll sort of best keep up to date with yourself.
There you go.
Yeah, easy done. So thanks for joining me today. It's been awesome to get your insight, and it's very fascinating insight. Working in both sports at the highest levels, and I think I've gotten a lot from it, and I know our listeners will get a lot from it as well. So thanks for joining me today, and all the best for the upcoming NRL season.
Yeah, good on you, Kieran. Thanks so much, mate. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby S&C podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby S&C on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to Come a Beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby S&C today and take your game to the next level.